Just 8 more sleeps until the start of the 2020 season, so that means it's getting real in these fantasy streets. We've got some bold predictions coming up for you right now. Kimmy, start us off, please. Blow me away with what you're thinking.
You asked for the bold, and I give you the spicy, and this spicy little take I have is that Preston Williams will finish the season as a top 20 wide receiver. Now, last season, he had a season-ending ACL injury in week 9. But before that, he led the Miami Dolphins in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and air yards. Now, he's being drafted right now outside of the top 50 wide receivers, very similarly to the way that Devontae Parker was taken last year. Now, while Williams was out, speaking of Devontae Parker, he stepped up to get 64% of his targets, 66% of his receptions, and 55% of his touchdowns. But guess what? Williams is going to be back and he is going to be healthy. And before he got injured, he was the guy. He was the first guy on that team. And I have all the faith. They've improved their offensive line. They're going to be transitioning to a rookie quarterback later in the season. So I don't know. You asked for the bold. I deliver. My bold take is Preston Williams.
You delivered. I'm with you, Kimmy. That's why I avoid Devontae Parker in drafts, because I love Preston Williams. And a player that I really like in drafts this season is Jared Goff. And my bold prediction is that he will throw 35 touchdown passes this season. That would be the most by an LA Rams quarterback. And obviously Kurt Warner had 36, but he played for St. Louis. I don't count it. But the one thing that I expect out of the Rams offense this year is to go back and have a little bit of progression, getting back to their 2018 totals when Jared Goff threw for 32 touchdown passes. And the big difference between 2018 and 2019 is that there's no Todd Gurley. And outside of the Tennessee Titans, nobody ran the ball inside the 5 more than the Los Angeles Rams without a trusty option there. We still don't know who the number 1 running back is going to be. So I expect them to throw the ball an awful lot more, which means more touchdown passes for Jared Goff.
We're still trying to find out who the real Jared Goff is, but I would like to see it. I'm looking at Hayden Hurst. I have been on his bandwagon all off season long. He gets a real opportunity now that he's in Atlanta and out of the shadow of Mark Andrews in Baltimore. And just sort of looking at the way Matt Ryan used his tight end last year, was right around 12% in target share when Austin Hooper was healthy at the beginning of the season. And you look at what Hooper did last year. He led the team in red zone targets. All 6 of his touchdowns came on red zone throws. So I expect that when the Falcons get down near the end zone, they're going to look in the direction of Hayden Hurst. He is an athletic tight end who, remember, once upon a time was a first-round pick in the NFL. Now we'll get a chance to show exactly what it is that he can do. All right, it's time for Ground Rankings presented by FedEx. We are looking to identify a handful of running backs who could very possibly outperform their ADP in 2020. So, Kimmy, who has caught your eye from the running back spot?
Adam Rank mentioned his name earlier, and it's Todd Gurley. Now, Rank, I'm going to throw a meme out there, and I don't know, since you're a little older, if you've seen it, but it's of Travis Scott. It's at his concert. He's holding his microphone, and he's yelling, and I want to yell, this is going to be Todd Gurley's comeback season. Now, right now, ADPs have him going in the 3rd round, the 15th running back off of the board. Now, he got a lot of hate, and there's continual concern over his knee injury, but guess what? He's on a new team, and you know what you have to do to be on a new team? You have to pass a physical, which is what he did. For the last 4 straight seasons, he's been a top 15 running back with the most touchdowns in NFL history since 2017 with 54. Now, the closest guy to that is CMC with 39. Now, Gurley, while he was a Los Angeles Ram, had 31 catches on the season, but Devonta Freeman finished with 70 targets and 59 catches, meaning that there is opportunity for Gurley to be utilized more in Atlanta. He's going back to where he played college football. I'm in on Gurley. It's the comeback season. And remember the meme of Travis Scott yelling, "It is time."
By the way, do you think you understand there is no person in NFL media who gets memed more than me? Just go look up, just Google Rank 3 and 13. You'll see me memed all over the place. So I know what that is. But I want to give a little PSA to anybody out there. Understand there are 2 D Johnsons who play running back for the Houston Texans. I would actually want Duke Johnson to be on my fantasy squad. And he is somebody that I'm targeting late in fantasy drafts, partly because we really don't know what David Johnson is going to be able to bring. I know he's in the best shape of his life. Bill O'Brien gave up his house for him. But Duke Johnson, every time he gets an opportunity, he goes out there and crushes it. I really do believe that he has the ability to be a 3-down back, and if he ever gets an opportunity, he would go out there and be that guy. David Johnson has missed 18 of his last 48 NFL games, so I'm going to look for Duke Johnson later in drafts. That D. Johnson.
Duke Johnson is like a fantasy transformer, more than meets the eye. I'm going to San Francisco, and I'm looking at Raheem Mostert, and his ADP this offseason has sort of been a moving target. It was high, then he was asking for a trade, so it dropped. Then he signed a deal with the Niners, so it went back up again. But right now, he's running as the starter in training camp. I expect the Niners to emphasize the run even more because they have so many injuries at the wide receiver spot. Plus, 3 of the team's first 5 games come against pretty favorable run defenses. So I think that Raheem Mostert's going to get off to a hot start. And if the reports are true that he's trying to catch the ball more this year, then I think he could really take off in a lot of fantasy leagues. That was Ground Rankings presented by FedEx. Hey rookies, it's time to raise your game presented by EA Sports Madden NFL 21. Now, if you've been watching this show all off season, and we know you have, we spent plenty of time talking about this rookie class. But of course, not every rookie is going to roll out of bed and be a star fantasy-wise in week 1. So we are going to be like Phillip Rivers. We're going to hit that sweet spot between aggressive and stupid and tell you the guys that we think could make a splash in the opening week of the season. Kimmy, who do you have your eye on?
Speaking of making a splash, it is the guy who I've been hyped about all offseason. It is my guy from Kansas City, Clyde Edwards-Elaire. Now, at LSU, we know he was a beast. 16 touchdowns on the season, 1,400 yards, and this means good things for the Chiefs, but bad things for the Houston Texans in Week 1. Last season, the Chiefs running back scored nearly 22 fantasy points against the Texans, including a nice little touchdown from Damian Williams. And more bad news for the Houston defense. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to running back, which means all the volume for Clyde, all the good juice. He is a trusted rookie starter ahead of Week 1.
No, I absolutely agree, Kimmy, and I have him on so many teams this season. And I did a couple of drafts over the weekend, and I ended up with Clyde Edwards-Elaire and Zach Moss of the Buffalo Bills. And with the thinking of, I'll probably play him a couple of weeks down the road. But when I look at the matchup against the New York Jets, I feel like that is going to be pretty favorable for them. I also look at the situation where Zach Moss has been really good in training camp so far. Devin Singletary's having a couple of issues, and it sounds more and more like he is going to be heavily involved in this offense. So I have no hesitation in getting Zach Moss. I don't want to be the guy who's sitting there Week 1, Sunday morning, and watch Zach Moss get 2 cheapy touchdowns and be like, why am I not starting this guy? So he will be in my lineup.
Zach Moss is the reason I've really been out on Devin Singletary so far this draft season. I'm looking at Justin Jefferson because he's the guy that I thought coming into this season had a chance to be the top rookie wide receiver overall this year, and I think he gets off with a bang against the Green Bay Packers. I look for the Vikings to run some more 3 wide receiver sets than we've seen from them in the past, but Stephon Diggs is gone. They're going to split some of that work between B.C. Johnson and Jefferson. He's going to be that slot guy. We know Kirk Cousins very comfortable throwing to his slot receiver, so I expect we're going to see Justin Jefferson really announce his presence with authority in Week 1 of the season. So there you go. Those are 3 rookies that we believe in, but hey, let's not forget about the olds, huh? Our own Maurice Jones-Drew has gone all in on a certain crafty veteran as part of our fantastic draft spectacular that Adam Rank hosted recently. Take a look at what MJD had to say. It's time for Air Rankings presented by FedEx. And today we are talking about the strategy of drafting stacks. Now, in fantasy football terms, that means starting a quarterback and a pass catcher from the same NFL offense. Now, we all are pretty much fans of drafting stacks on our fantasy roster. So, Kimmy, when you're looking at QB pass catcher combinations, which one are you most inclined to go after?
Well, the 2 of you guys are predictable, and you're going to throw out those big-name guys that are within the top 10 of their positions, which could be somewhat unrealistic to grab in drafts, which is why I'm targeting Joe Burrow and Tyler Boyd. Now, as we know, Burrow is the Mahomes of college football, with 6,000 passing yards, threw for 60 touchdowns, and rushed for 5 of those. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals threw the ball 63% of the time last season, which is the 5th highest in the league, giving Joe Burrow all the volume. But who picks up that volume for him? It's Tyler Boyd. 2 straight seasons with 1,000+ receiving yards and almost 150 targets. Now, if the volume for passing continues, Boyd can duplicate those numbers with a more trusted quarterback in Joe Burrow, and you as a fantasy manager can be happy because you got both of those guys without using all of your fantasy capital.
Kimmy, I will give you respect for going Joe Burrow, but you want to talk predictable? This is not predictable because I'm saying Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, okay? So why not? Listen, here's my thing. I keep ending up with Davante Adams if I'm drafting at the top of the first round and a lot of the elite running backs are gone by the time the second round hits me. I take Davante Adams, and then later as I wait on a quarterback, I don't like it, but I draft Aaron Rodgers. Last year, very generous. Allowed Aaron Jones to have 19 touchdowns. How did the Packers repay him? They drafted his replacement. So Aaron Rodgers is now in revenge mode against his own team, and I expect him to have a monster season. And you know what? I don't want to enjoy it, but I guess I will by drafting this stack.
You praising Aaron Rodgers is personal growth, and I'm proud of you, Adam Rank. I'm looking at the Seattle Seahawks combination of Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett. If you are more inclined to sort of go in the middle rounds to get a quarterback, you've got Wilson kind of sitting there in round 6. Tyler Lockett usually coming off the board right around round 5. So if you're especially near the turn, this is an easy stack to sort of pick up. Both guys have solid production, could end up in the top 10 or 12 at their respective positions, and I expect they're going to have a very good year together. So we've just been jibber-jabbering this whole show and figured maybe this is the time for us to check in with you, how you are feeling. So we went to twitter.com to kind of see what's on your mind and take some of the questions that you had for us. So let's start with this tweet from Miles Marlowe. Kimmy, this one is for you. Who would you draft, Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson?
The battle of disappointing former top 10 picks. But for me, it's going to be Le'Veon Bell. Now, I'm going to quote Adam Gase. He said, "I feel like we can find better ways to get the ball to him and help him create more explosive plays." Now, that's Adam Gase, so take what he says with a grain of salt. But Bell was targeted 10th amongst receivers in 2019. He almost doubled the scrimmage yards that he got as opposed to Johnson. Bell is in year 2 with the system, and he actually played in the year prior, unlike Johnson, who's learning a new offense and was unable to stay healthy last year. So let's hope Adam Gase is right and fantasy owners can be a little bit more happy when they put Le'Veon Bell in their starting lineup.
Yeah, I want Lev Bell back in my fantasy life, no doubt. Rank, Bobby A has the 10th pick in a 12-team standard draft. Who are your favorite 2 options at first round and at the turn?
Well, Bobby, ideally, I would like to draft a running back and another running back in these first 2 rounds, kind of solidify yourself right there. And the players I would be looking at, obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which I don't know if he's going to get to the 10th overall pick. With us hipsters, he usually doesn't, but otherwise, you're fine. You can look at Josh Jacobs. You got Kenyon Drake as a pretty good option in Arizona. And you could also look at Miles Sanders. And those are the guys that I would look at. And here's the thing. Don't be afraid to adjust on the fly. Like, you can have a plan. You can say, look, I want one of these running backs. I figure you should be able to get those 2 guys with where you're drafting. But if not, don't be afraid to look at somebody like George Kittle or Travis Kelce or one of the elite wide receivers if that doesn't pan out.
The Amoeba draft strategy, always be adapting. Finally, we asked you to send us your burning fantasy draft questions. Alex Merced asked, why is my friend at Mark11V so bad at fantasy football? And Mark responded with, I would also like to know this answer, #help. Well, Mark, it's simple. You're not watching this show enough. Just tune in and you'll be a whole lot better at fantasy football. So over the weekend, we did a mock draft for a Superflex league, which in a lot of ways turns into sort of 2 quarterback leagues. Now, these things are gaining more popularity across fantasy football, so we wanted to kind of dive in to some of the strategies here. Now, I'll start because I was the one who went out and drafted Patrick Mahomes at 6th overall in this league. Lamar Jackson went just behind him at 7, and my thought process is here, look, in these Superflex leagues, quarterbacks become a lot more popular. There's a lot more scarcity because people want to try to get 2 on their roster. And when you're talking about the elite guys, whether it's Mahomes or Jackson, they tend to be so much further ahead than pretty much the rest of the players at the position, it is worth trying to go early, get them on your roster. Think of them sort of almost an elite tight end because you don't have a whole lot of them there. There aren't a lot to choose from, and there you go. So, Kimmy, you also took a quarterback at the end of the first round in Dak Prescott, huh?
Right, so I kind of had your similar strategy. I got Dak Prescott as my 9th overall. He was the 3rd quarterback selected off the board. And like you said, when you have an elite quarterback, that's who you want to get in a super flex league. For me, there was too big of a drop off by waiting in those later rounds and getting some of the guys that Adam Rank targeted. So for me, I was all in on Dak Prescott since you stole Patrick Mahomes from me and somebody else picked up Jackson.
You know what? And I'm not afraid, though, to let those guys, if you miss out on those guys in the first round and you have to settle for somebody, I know it's stupid to say that, but like I ended up with Matt Ryan. I was choosing between Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz, and I was sitting at the 10 spot. So I got Matt Ryan, and I'm like, okay, I feel pretty comfortable. I can wait for Joe Burrow or Daniel Jones or even Baker Mayfield later on in the draft. But Carson Wentz was there in the 6th round, so I took them both.